right, Steve, we're here on the podcast, and you actually just informed me of something pretty interesting, which I didn't realize about our podcast. We're over 140 episodes here, and today is the first time that we're actually having property managers on the podcast.
Yeah, it seems crazy to me, but we're so, like I mentioned before we jumped on the recording, we're so hyper focused on landlords and just sort of overlook the fact that property managers like Kim and Scott that we've got on here today are such a wealth of knowledge because there's a multiplication factor of everything that they're running into versus like you, Eric, who manage less than 10 properties. You might only run into something once a year, every other year, maybe every 10 years or something whereas these guys who are doing it on a larger scale are running into this stuff every single day in a lot of cases. And what I was so impressed with, which we'll get into here with Kim and Scott, just looking at the website and listening to them and even talking before we jumped on this live recording, they've been there, they've done it. They have such a wealth of experience, and I think that's going to be great for the show today.
Yeah, absolutely. Scott, do you think that you could tell us a little bit more about your business and where you guys are located and how long you've been at it for?
Sure. Hi, I'm Scott Hampton, and I'm the broker and co-owner of Hampton Hampton Management and Leasing, and we're here in Orlando, Florida. Our home office is Orlando. We do have another office in Tampa, Florida, and then we have one in Melbourne, Florida, which is all the way from Cocoa down to Palm Bay in that marketplace. Kim and I have been doing it. Sometimes we joke it with clients when we're talking with them. They'll say, "How long have you been doing this?" And I just say, "Too long." And they'll kind of laugh, And quite honest with you, that's what we tell them sometimes. So we've been doing it probably over 20 years now in this market. And have watched huge changes to the Orlando market and the Central Florida market, as everyone in the country is well aware of, as the growth continues to be driven here by the entertainment industry and the technology industry is growing here. And then obviously the space and satellite business has become a huge industry in Brevard and that coast.
Okay. And we just learned schools too. You guys have some great tech schools down there as well.
Yeah, and obviously, I don't know if a lot of folks know this. University of Central Florida is here, and it is the second largest university in the country here, behind I think Ohio State. I don't know if you know that the Knights don't really do that well, but
you know what?
That's why we don't.
I could be wrong with this, but a previous podcast guest that we had on just a few weeks ago, his name is Dr. Roger Fierstein. We had him on. We were talking about how to set a vision for your landlord business. And he was telling me in a meeting that he's local to Buffalo, that I think it's UCF. They're one of the first universities that's creating these incubation labs inside of the university. Have you guys heard about that at all?
Yeah, we've heard some of that. And I think you may have seen on TV, their engineering department, a bunch of the guys out there developed those basically they look like mechanical arms that were done in 3D printers for kids.
Oh, they did it for the child.
Yeah.
Cool. It didn't have an arm. Yeah.
I think I saw one of those videos. It was like they had Iron Man come out.
Iron Man.
Yeah, and the kid, and it's just, you watch that and you're like start welling up. Like this kid's getting an arm. It's so ridiculous. Like that stuff's awesome.
School too.
Yeah. And then they just opened the medical school here. University of Florida Medical School just opened. I don't know if you know, it's a huge medical facility here in what's called the Lake Nona area. You have the University of Florida Medical School just opened. You had Nemours brand new children's hospital just opened. You had the new VA Medical Center just opened there, and the Burnham Institute from California moved here for research.
So it's safe to say there's no shortage of tenants for you guys.
No, and high quality tenants.
That's what's great about it, right? You guys got a great selection pool. So yeah, we'll get into all that. I know that we're going to touch on a lot of stuff that you guys are doing. There's some really, really unique things that I think that you guys are doing that I haven't seen anywhere else. And I think it's just a great opportunity to share and pass along some of those ideas because they're well worth sharing for sure.
Yeah. I was sharing earlier as we were talking before we jumped in the call. Steve and I, our desk in the other part of the office kind of sit next to each other. And I was on a Bigger Pockets forum, and I can't remember exactly what that discussion was about. But I saw Kim had commented on the discussion, and she was saying exactly what she does with the move in, move out for a tenant, and also I believe for renewing a lease. And you had mentioned that you actually have a third party come in and do the inspections for you. And I said something to Steve about it. And he's like, I've never heard of that. And I was like, all right, we need to get these people on the podcast. So yeah, Kim and Scott, I was just wondering if you could kind of tell us a little bit more about exactly what you do when you have a new tenant come in and you're doing the inspections for the move in, move out and all that.
Sure. I'll tell you one reason why actually we went to that, not for the obvious reasons, but one day I had somebody that left the company and I went in to do a move out to find the move in pictures, and there were two. I'm like, come on. So therein lies the problem. And I'm all about systems and making sure everything is consistent across the board. So he said, we need to have this done professionally and by a third party. We're by no means inspectors. Now we know what we're talking about. We know what we're looking at. We've been doing this for over 20 years. So I went to an inspector that actually is licensed through the state of Florida, and he usually does the regular home inspection. And I said to him, what do you think about doing this for property managers? And at the time, I just wanted it done for renewals. And he said, that's really interesting. I think that's something I like to do. So we set off on putting that together, and he actually does the whole report. He gets on the roof, he checks the electrical, checks the appliances, and he also offers us a warranty on the appliances for 120 days after he's inspected if something goes wrong with it. He has all the photos, has it all notated on there, and lets you know what's going on. We send that to the owner, we send it to the tenant, and then of course we keep one on file. And the owners were loving it.
Yeah.
And so just kind of progress now into the move in, move out, and renewals are all done by the professional inspector.
Love it. And the first thing that came to my mind was, you're eliminating that bias, or that, if something goes to court, there's always that opportunity that somebody's going to, say that there was some extra damage, or say that there was additional wear and tear, or at least the judges have that in mind, right? They're always kind of conscious of.
Oh gosh, it's never ending. Everybody's very litigious. So I'm like, check this box, let's do this. And
Right.
Putting it off on a third party, it's not somebody's got an axe to grind with me. They didn't like it from the time they moved in or what have you. But we had an incident just recently where in our Brevard office near the beach, a tenant moved in and she said there's mold, only been there 2 weeks, and a letter from an attorney, and it's $17,000. We're like, whoa. I'm like, why didn't the inspector find this? So send that over to our attorney. He presents it, and they're like, guess what? That just went down the drain. There's no more lawsuit anymore.
Right.
They just thought they were going to get quick money. And so, we're there to protect the landlords, and that's just one more piece to that.
And I'm just picturing the poor landlord that thinks they did a great job with the move in, move out. They have the 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 or 5 photos. And what happens if you do run into that situation? Now, like you mentioned, you had that third party inspector who happens to be a mold expert, right?
Yeah.
So what more do you need? You're right. That's case closed. I love that story. It's great.
It's great. He's professional as far as professional mold inspector, and for termites as well. So if he saw something, he would let us know. And getting on the roof, let us know if there's a roof leak. You don't want that, and leak in on the tenant's furniture. And of course, it's $50,000. They think.
Right.
Protects all the way around.
Yeah.
Now,
well, Steve, I was going to ask. I feel like you know this, but isn't security deposits isn't that like the number one thing that you go to court for with landlord tenants? It's always security deposits and the move in, move out checklist. That's the one thing that you really got if you have it ironclad, which sounds like you have it set up better than anyone we've ever talked to. You really protect yourself that way. We
do. It really has cut down on those people who just want to fight and argue with you, about $50 or $65 for a carpet cleaning or whatever it may be. And we also go ahead and put into the lease agreement that we are going to have it professionally cleaned and deducted from that. And just those little things that are in there always protect you in the end, or come bite you in the butt later on if you don't do it.
Right.
So also mentioned to do it at market rate. Some of the folks put in a dollar amount. We've always changed it, and meaning we'll clean the house at market rate. We'll clean the house and do the carpet at market rate, because to make the carpet clean back to the really, if you put $100 in there and then come to find out they got to really do a deep cleaning and maybe dye this, and it's $238. So we put in there at the market rate.
Wow.
You know,
That's actually a really great point. I think I don't think I've ever seen that before. I think everybody always, zeroes in on that dollar amount, tries to come up with something, the average of what they typically see.
yeah.
I think that's a great takeaway right there. Just putting it at market rate. The other thing I'm thinking of too is, I know a lot of landlords that have to make that decision about outsourcing certain things, and it always comes down to cost and how it's eaten into their cash flow. Obviously, there can be a case made very easily to say the money you've saved just on that $17,000 lawsuit, right? So there's a huge benefit there, cost benefit. But how does the cost compare to a typical home inspection? Is it the same cost, or is it much less expensive than having a full home inspection done when they're doing these move-in, move-out inspections for you?
Well, I mean, we got to negotiate with them, of course, because we have 3 offices. So the volume of work that we're going to give to them, they offered us the lower price, and it's not to any cost to our owners, by the way. They don't feel that cost to them. That's free on their part. And it is a lower cost rather than the full blown inspection you receive when you're buying the house. That's $300 to $500. It's less than that.
Well, right. I think one of the things that's important to mention too, because like as we were talking before, we kind of started the recording here. I think you said that this person that does this for you, it wasn't even a service that they had offered, correct?
No.
Yeah. So you guys, you just kind of got to talking with somebody who did home inspections and realized, hey, this is an entirely new market to tap, which I think is important to mention because people might be listening and think this is a great service for them, but they're like, nobody does this where I live. Well, there might be 100 people who do this where you live. They just don't know it yet. So.
Exactly. Yeah, I did meet somebody on Bigger Pockets that they said, Kim, that's great. And they were a home inspector.
Oh.
And so maybe they'll start offering that now in their market.
And to note, the pricing basically, and just so I don't know if you want to say the number, we can say the number in there for full disclosure. It's $99.
Wow. That's incredible. Oh my God.
Yeah.
That is
$99, okay.
Yeah.
And, the point though is don't
so
get
worth
lost
it.
on the $99 for a home inspector. Is get lost in with say for example with McDonald's, they only make 10 or 10 cents on a hamburger. But well, if you do a billion hamburgers a year, you're making some money. And the same with the inspections. If you're doing there at 99 and you're doing regular home inspectors 400 or 500. Well, if I'm only doing a couple of those, but if I'm doing 20 other moving, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Every month. Suddenly it starts adding up over a year. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, there you go, landlords. You got it. Reach out to your local inspectors. Offer them to do it for $99. Maybe they'll bite on it. Maybe they won't. If you got a decent volume, I'm sure it helps. But yeah, that's incredible. I mean, that's a slam dunk. That's a no-brainer for me. I think that's genius. I can't believe nobody else has thought of it. It's incredible. And some of the questions that we get a lot of times here at RentPrep from landlords, trying to make that leap or make that decision into whether they're going to hire a property management company. And a lot of them don't want to because they feel like it's eating into, like we mentioned, eating into that cash flow, or maybe their margins are already tight on that property. So with what you guys do and managing properties for different homeowners all around, what are some of the benefits? What are some of the the real selling points for a landlord who is going to make that decision and says, you know what, I'm going to hire this company to do it?
Well, I mean, they really have to conduct their due diligence. It's just like anything. There's a lot of them out there, but not all of them are maybe suited for them and their property or experienced in that. You've really got to look at it. We have the Department of Business and Professional Regulation. And in Florida, you have to be licensed to be able to manage and lease property. Now, it's not the same in every state, but for the majority of them, you either have to have a real estate license or a property management license. So first and foremost, I think it's important for that because they have to be held to a higher standard. You don't just want maybe, and it may sound bad, but you just don't want a realtor that's trying to just pay their car payment and they go, oh, I'm just going to lease a couple houses here. Mm-hmm. That's not what you want. You know, to make sure, are they licensed? How many houses do they manage? How many houses did they lease? What are the, what's everybody saying about them online?
Right.
Really
I saw you guys I like that little review, kind of like a scrolling review section on your website.
And the biggest things that we get complaints on are tenants and their security deposit. That's
Sure.
typically the worst.
Right.
And that means I'm working for the owner. I'm not working for the tenant.
Well, we
Right.
we get reviews from tenants once in a while too, and it's kind of like, well, we did our job.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and they don't like that. I mean, and you've got to look too, what kind of agreements do they have in place? Can I give a 30-day notice? Do they hold me to a year? I mean, do they charge me when I leave? I mean, there's just so many little intricacies that you really need to look at.
Right. And just to let landlords know too, I don't know how it is in Florida and New York. The process for becoming a certified property manager is much more in depth, much more extensive than to become a real estate agent, right? Is it the same in Florida? I mean, it's a pretty big commitment. The cost is probably 3 or 4 times as much. But the amount of hours, the coursework, and the amount of hours and internships that are required. So landlords can make that distinct difference between a real estate agent who wants to help manage some properties for you and a real property manager. There's a huge difference there.
Do you mind if I talk about the CRMC, Stephen?
Not at all. No.
One important thing, I think it's good for people to hear, because we're talking about, do you need this license? Do you need that? Through the National Association of Residential Property Managers, which is where I encourage people to go look. If they are looking for a property manager, they can look by state, they can look by area. And it's about 6,000 people that belong to that around the United States. But there are specific designations on there. There's what's called an RMP, a residential management professional, an MPM, which is a master property manager. And then the ultimate on top of that is called the CRMC, which is the Certified Residential Management Company. And there are only about 50 in the United States with that. And it's extremely hard and takes several years to even think about getting it. Beyond, you have to get your RMP and your MPM first.
Wow. So I don't want to put you on the spot.
Sure.
Do you guys have that accreditation?
Yes, we do.
You're
we
one of the 50?
have it at both of our offices.
That's excellent. That's outstanding. I don't want to put you on the spot there, but I thought you're only talking about it if you have it.
Yeah, it's pretty in depth. I mean, they come in, they interview your staff.
Wow.
So if anybody's got a bone to pick with you, it's kind of scary. They look at, is everybody licensed? What type of contracts do you have in place? They even look at, are you doing meetings with them? Are you providing fair housing training for them? Do you have policy manuals? Do you have processes for everything? Does your firm carry E&O, liability insurance, workers' comp? How do you do your reconciliations? Are you doing them? They'll look at them. How do you do your collections? How do you do evictions? It's so encompassing. It's crazy. And they spend 2 days in your office.
Wow. Well, I think that's some really great advice and a huge takeaway for landlords, because that's a really common question we get from landlords is, how do I pick the right one? How do I know who's good? There's, you guys have seen them. There's a million horror stories out there of bad property management companies that aren't doing a great job. And there's also this notion, which may not be really inaccurate, but a lot of landlords believe that, especially when you have a real estate agent that's doing it, but there's almost a benefit to a lot of turnover. And so, there's almost this feeling like, well, they're not going to get quality tenants. They're not going to do a great job because they're making more money on the turnover. They don't want us to have long-term tenants. I've heard that a lot of times from landlords. Whether or not that's true, but I think a lot of that could be put to rest knowing that you're working with a company that is really, really vetted well.
Yeah, and it's not like when you get this CRMC, actually, I just did the renewal on it. You have to go through this every couple of years. They come back to your office. So It's not like, oh, I got this designation, I can move on. No, they come back and check you out. I mean,
some kind of like plaque sitting on the wall. It's all yellowed from the 80s or something. Like, no, I took that.
Well, I think that goes back to that point about the difference between basically somebody who's doing a few houses, maybe they're really trying to do a sale, and somebody who's really a professional property manager. Those are the differentiations you get when you want a real property manager. And I think that's where the value is. That's where the value is for an owner. That's an expensive learning curve that they don't have to go through. And then also you bring to the table the resources of attorneys, accounting. In Florida, and maybe not as much, obviously, we're in Buffalo, New York, but we deal a lot with foreign nationals here. In foreign nationals, meaning, Venezuelan, Brazilian, Colombian, Chinese. I mean, we have 110 in Orlando. We have 110. Actually, we're doing 1042Ss right now for reporting for the IRS for foreign nationals. We're doing 110 of those right now. We have 110 people that get a 1040. That means they're not even in the country. They don't live here.
Wow.
Yeah.
So 110 of our clients are somewhere else in the world, know.
Which again,
we have to do special reporting for them.
Right. That typically a landlord may not even be aware of. So,
none. I guarantee they're not.
Right. Yeah. Well,
we just took over some houses last week from a real estate agent who's playing property manager. And these people, I think they get angry with us because we have to do things by the book and say, oh, we need to have your TIN number, tax identification number. I don't have that. And like, well, and they just go through this whole scenario and like, you're the bad guy. And it's like, we have to do the right thing. And these agents, they just have no clue whatsoever what's going on.
Right.
Well, to even take it a step further, there just was an article I read about, and I'm not going to use acronyms of FERPTA, whereas foreign, they used to pay a 10% tax when they sold. Well, a lot of realtors don't know that. I don't want to go too far into some of those investment things, but it just changed to 15%. So where they find it out at is the closing table.
Oh,
right.
Wow.
Right, when it's too late.
They find out at, and then they call us and they'll say, why didn't you? And they'll say, weren't you getting the commission in this? Aren't you supposed to be the professional? You know what I mean?
Right.
But we deal with so many foreign nationals and getting them a TIN number and how to get a TIN number. And then, we have to write a letter to the IRS to say why they need the TIN number now because of terrorism.
Right.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more to that and bringing that value to a transaction that encompasses the whole solution from them acquisition through either they need to do renovation or maybe not do renovation to acquiring a tenant to onboarding that tenant properly and then, basically working with that tenant all the way through the tenancy,
Perfect segue, Scott. You mentioned the onboarding. Hands down, the thing I was most impressed with when I went onto your website, you guys have a fantastic video. My first impression watching this video, it's an onboarding video that takes tenants through what to expect with their tenancy at your place. Immediately, the thing that I pulled out of this video is they have been there, done it, seen it, been through it. They've covered everything. And I love the idea that you guys have this video. And before we jumped on the recording, Kim, you were mentioning too that it hits so many great points, but it also puts that responsibility on the tenant. So you can say, we've given you the video. You know all of this. You've seen it. Yeah. I mean, can you run through some of the things that you guys cover in that video, that onboarding video?
Sure. I'll let Scott go over it. But the one thing that was important for us, and this is true for any landlord, you get 2-3 months down the line, they're like, oh, I didn't know that. You didn't tell me that. And we're like, really? And, you may have Susie, Bill, and Bob, all the leasing or property managers, and they all say things differently. And you're like, wow, maybe they didn't tell them that. So now at the move-in video, it's like, you've heard that, that, you watch that, and so you can't say you didn't know. Right. And so that's kind of the point on making that. But Scott can kind of give you some more insight into what is in our move-in video.
The move-in video basically allows the resident to go in, basically walks them through step by step the lease in section by section, explaining it. Now, we're not attorneys and we're not there to interpret that lease for them, but it does explain the lease and basically goes through it step by step in how the rent is when it's due, and then how they can pay it. And there's a process that when we have a leasing coordinator that onboards with them too, that's there with them, that basically sets up a tenant portal for them where they can then pay the rent, and then not only pay the rent through ACH, they can use Visa, Visa, MasterCard. And we actually have a thing now called Pay Near Me, in the portal. They can go to any 7-Eleven in the United States and pay their rent.
Wow. So it's like a Western Union kind of a thing
Yeah,
where it's a wire. That's cool.
Yeah, and it actually just sends them out a barcode. So so it's not like you go up and say, "Hey, I need to pay your rent" to the guy at 7-Eleven. They just go up with a barcode on their phone, and he just hits beep, and it just says 800, or 1,000 or whatever, and the $3.50 convenience fee. They pay it, and then I can see it live in the system where they paid.
That's great. That onboarding video, one of the things that jumped out at me was it just seems so simple, but I swear we get so many calls about this. Messing with the appliances, something as simple as even changing air filters, right? And I thought that was great that you guys mentioned that and even showed it. A lot of it is just the fact that it's visual. It's one thing to read a lease, and by the second page, you're punch drunk, right? You don't even know what you're reading half the time. I think for these tenants, it looks like word scramble, But when you're watching the video, it just something hits home. And so that was one thing that really jumped out at me, was that you guys showed the air filter, and you said, listen, you're going to be responsible if you end up changing this. So don't touch anything, basically, right?
Yeah. Did you like the one about pushing the button on the reset on the disposed all?
Yes. That's what
that was about 10 takes to get your finger just right to see you push the red button up there. Right. But, when you do it on the scale we do it, and, these are very common calls every single day.
Right.
And just to save yourself sending out a guy, or you going out, or you trying to find someone to run across town and go do this, to go push the red button on the reset.
Yeah.
And then get, a $38, or quite honestly, now they're like $65 or $85 service calls.
Right. Well, and again,
it's simple.
Yeah. And it makes a great point that we said from the beginning, which was, for some landlords, it may take them a long time to run into these problems. For you guys, you're dealing with them every day. You've built solutions. You've crossed that bridge. And I think the biggest takeaway for landlords is watch the video and, look at some of the things that you guys are covering. You guys are doing a great job. Eric, I'm sure we're going to link to their website for sure on this podcast show notes, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't recall it off the top of my head. What's the website URL?
That's leasingorlando.com.
Oh, yeah. That's pretty easy to remember.
Yeah.
Had that for 20 years.
Nice.
Yeah. So what can you guys share from your experience on how to set, the relationship with a new tenant, how to get that set off on the right foot?
Scott, you want to do that?
Yeah. I think that's basically all the way from the moment that they interact with us. And we, again, are doing it in a scale. So people got to remember, when folks call in, they actually go into a call center for us. And then we have a scaling where they're scaled based on 6 questions. And then from there, they get access to basically set their appointment, which hits whoever that property coordinators hits their schedule. And they allot a time. And so they then, can get an appointment, and you, I'm sure, hear it like we had used to hear it is, hey, I keep leaving messages and no one calls me back.
Mm-hmm.
I left messages for the realtor, and I left it for like 5 of them, and no one ever called me.
Right. Right.
I mean, and the main thing is people get their phone call answered. They get access to and can get into the property. They're qualified, and you're not showing people that aren't qualified.
Right.
And wasting your time. Then, they basically, our folks have iPad minis. They're all on Verizon, and everything we've done is online. And we joke about it. We joke about it in the office. We don't want people to get on what's called the be back bus.
Mm-hmm.
They look at it and I'll be back. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Don't get on the be back bus, because that's expensive, because you got to come back. You know what I mean?
Right.
Let them get on the be back bus.
Right.
Do it now.
That's a terrible bus to get on. Don't get on there. And it costs money, because that's time.
Right. Time. More. Yeah. You got to send somebody else out there.
Somebody's going to have to go back out there. So anyway, that process is then done, where then we process the applications and then get with the client, get them approved, and then have a lease done, and then have an online portal, which we set up, where they can pay rent, do maintenance, and get access to all their documents.
Right. Yeah. So I'm curious. You mentioned you have the questions, right? The 6 questions, the qualifiers. Do you know off the top of your head, or roughly what those qualifying questions are, to know in 6 questions if this person's qualified to look at the apartment or not?
Yeah, it's basically just, do you make 3 times the rental amount? Have you ever been evicted? Do you have a felony background or a felony or adjudicated? You know what I mean? And then I don't remember the other ones off the top of my head. Or basically, depending on if it had a pet or not a pet, they would ask them, do you have a pet or not a pet?
Right.
So there's no reason to show or ask people if they're not going to take a pet anyway. Do you even have one? You know what I mean?
Right.
And when do you need it?
Right.
Yeah.
You need it in 6 months. I'm not showing it to them now.
And then there's lastly is when do you need it?
Right.
So we'd like to try to keep them within that 30-day window.
Sure.
And then they can get access.
I think you nailed those questions pretty perfectly. From what we do here on a, as a screening standpoint, that covers a lot. Just in the, like you said, the pre-qualification stage. That's pretty important. You don't want to waste your time. It's something that we're constantly preaching to landlords. Don't waste your time. Don't waste their time. Don't have them fill out an application that you're never going to run a background check because it's not worth it. So I think that's great. That's a great step that a lot of landlords tend to miss. They're so focused on getting that vacancy filled, they just want bodies in the apartment to show them, and they're not thinking 2 steps ahead and saying, well, am I potentially even wasting my time here? There's a pre-qualification stage that needs to happen, whether it's a quick phone call, responding to an email or whatever. But those are important questions to ask right up front and just to know who you're dealing with.
Yeah, because I see a question on bigger pockets all the time that I think it's one of those pain points is that they'll have 10 people show up to the appointment and they'll want them all to fill out applications. And then they're like, well, what do I do from there? Do I take this one first or do I process them all at the same time? And they run into those kind of situations. And if they have definitely done their homework on the front end, I think it can weed a lot of those people out. But I think there's a big problem now with people taking money and processing all these applications. When for our company, we do one at a time. We can take a backup, but we process one at a time, and we really avoid a lot of that fair housing problems you can get.
For sure. Yeah. And you're right. It is a problem. And we hear from tenants who, are stressed out or aggravated about this, who paid sometimes it's pretty expensive. Sometimes it's a $50 application fee or something. And then, they're basically getting the brief phone call or an email saying, sorry. And they don't know if their background check's been ran. They don't know if they've made what part of the process they even made it to. So yeah, I like the idea of having that systematic approach, and you're eliminating a lot of problems right out the gate.
Yes.
Yeah. You get a real pain point on the tenant side. That we hear that too. We do one at a time. We hear that from people, and quite honest with you, we don't want their application. I don't want their application fee money. Yeah. I think some people think I'm getting rich on that.
Yeah. That's the biggest misconception that I've heard. I couldn't tell you how many tenants.
Hysterical.
Right. How many tenants try to make that argument? And I say, do you really think somebody's going to make a business making an extra $35, $50 on you? It's not a money-making scheme. I'm sure some landlords do abuse it. I'm sure some of them love the idea that somebody's paying them just to look at the application. But yeah, it couldn't be farther from the truth. I agree with you. Yeah.
So I agree with you. And it's about, for us, is the time, back to the time factor for landlords, we want to get the best qualified tenant in the quickest amount of time, and to get that unit up and going and making money for everybody.
Yeah.
And then somebody else obviously getting a place to live. So our goal isn't to run people around and waste people's time. It's to finding the best qualified tenant as quick as possible. And we say firm, fair, and consistent is the term we always use.
Yeah, and just out of curiosity, as far as your marketing efforts go, attracting quality tenants, do you find you're getting better quality tenants in one place versus another, maybe Zillow versus Craigslist, or walk-bys, or where you guys find that you're getting the best traction in your marketing?
What's interesting is that we have friends throughout the United States in property management, and a lot of them use the Craigslist. In Florida, not a good thing for us. Yep. California, it's great. It's like the biggest thing they use out there. For us, we get a lot of scammers on there. They'll take our photos and then put their own information on there and say it rents for $2,000. They'll put it on there for $1,000. Yep. And we've had then people go drive by the house and they see our sign and they'll call us and they go, "Oh, I sent the guy money." And I go, "What?" it's that due diligence piece, and that's sad that people have to do that, but
Yep.
that's what happens here for us at Craigslist. So our online piece is the hugest part of us gaining our applicants, and usually that's like rentals.com, Zillow, Hot Pads, all those things. There's about 30 that we do in a package that we syndicate out.
Gotcha. Do you use a service to syndicate that for you?
We do.
Do you know, is it, what's the new one? Trulia, the one that Trulia owns? I can't think of the name of it right now off the top of my head.
No.
It's not a third-party service?
No,
It is. Well, some of it is.
Okay.
Some of it's there, and then some of it's inside of the operating program we use is Appfolio.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
And so inside there, you can just hit post the internet, and it will syndicate through a lot of those.
Yeah.
And then you can even get their premium leads, which goes even further. And then there is the service we use. There's another one we use called Tenant Turner, and they will also syndicate out to some different ways too.
Big fan of Tenant Turner here. We've been with them. Yeah, we've been with them since their launch, and we've got our product built into their site too. So yeah. Good guys over there, working hard to do the right thing. So yeah,
absolutely.
Eric, I feel like I've monopolized the second half of this interview. I apologize, but these guys are so interesting.
You know what? For the people listening on the podcast, they wouldn't be able to see, but we're recording the video too. I was a little embarrassed. I actually had to leave there for a second. I forgot the power cord for my computer. Such a jerk. But you know what? I did have one question, because I know that a lot of the landlords that we deal with, when they come into RentPrep, it's because, sadly, a lot of times it's because they had an eviction. And then because of that, like, traumatic experience, they realize I need to change something. They do some research, they find their way to us, and we do the background check for them. But they don't really know what you don't know until that thing happens to them that kind of changes their perspective. For you guys, if it's a landlord that's listening and they've been thinking about property management and they're like, they're thinking about it, they're not sure. Like, what kind of feedback have you gotten from customers that have come to you and started using you to manage their properties? Like, what's changed for them? Have they given you any kind of feedback of like what the experience has been, especially somebody who maybe has never used a property manager before and then started using you guys?
Scott, go ahead.
Yeah, I think some of that, and when you saw, like you were saying, Eric, on our website, we actually asked the owners and the residents, actually, and any work order a resident does, and any owner that had anything done in reference to being onboarded or changes, we send them, we use reputation.com. We send them then a survey, and then we get that information back from the tenants and the owners. Basically, how was your experience? How did it go well? What can we do better? And basically, I'm going to tell you, bottom line for all owners is basically communication.
Yep.
They just want to be communicated with and know what's kind of going on. It's not like they expect you to, come have dinner with them tonight and, at their house and, or make dinner for them or whatever. But they just want that communication, that they kind of have an, pretty good understanding of where we're at in the thing, and when am I getting my money, and, how things are happening, so that they're communicated with it. And I think that's the biggest piece that I hear from clients is they never were communicated with, and they became frustrated. And they couldn't find out what was going on, and they became frustrated and left. And I hear that constantly. I hear communication. No one communicated with me. I couldn't get a hold of anybody.
Right. And I got to imagine for a lot of landlords that are doing this themselves, maybe like Eric mentioned, maybe they hit that rough patch in the road. Maybe they had an eviction or just an awful tenant that they had to deal with, and it just drained them. So I think for a lot of landlords considering this, peace of mind, right? I mean, that's got to be a huge factor in this, is just knowing that it's being done right in the best way possible.
Oh yeah,
exactly. And that's not something that maybe you want to commoditize, and I say to owners, it's one thing, to put gas in your car, be it 7-Eleven or BP, it still makes the car go. It's different in property management. It's hard to make it a commodity and to just boil it down to the cheapest guy. And so, just don't look at it from it's cheap, and you might be getting what you're paying for. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that's my favorite saying, because it certainly holds true for screening services too. Is you get what you pay for,
Yeah.
And So if you're getting it cheap, there's probably a reason for that. There's somebody's cutting corners. You're not getting the same communication like you mentioned that you guys are giving. So I like that. I think for a lot of landlords that might be on the fence, certainly worth looking into, or maybe testing it out on a property, see how it goes.
Yeah, and we do a 30-day on our management agreements. Also, they're 1-year agreements, but they're 30-day cancellations. So again, we want that transparency. So if you're not, as I say to clients, I just tell them, if you're not in love with me, or vice versa, I'm not in love with you. There's no reason for us to continue this situation. Let's put it, let's end it. You know what I mean?
That's how I know you guys have been around a long time. Anybody that's willing to fire a client knows the value of their own time and sanity. I can't tell you how much that means, really, honestly, that anybody that's been in business a long time sort of has that mentality of, all right, I'm going to build a back door here for myself as well in case it's just not working. Yeah, I love that.
The term we use, by the way, is called self-manage.
Okay. Yeah.
I recommend you self-manage.
Right.
We're not letting you go. You're just going to self-manage this property now. And we're not going to be a part of that.
I love it. Yeah. That's perfect. Yeah.
We're not managing in that neighborhood any longer.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, Eric, I'll let you wrap it up because, like I said, I feel like I've monopolized this. If there's anything else you got, but I feel like you guys are, again, just a wealth of knowledge, and I recommend anybody that's listening to this, landlords or property managers, go to their website, look what they're doing, look how to do it right. There's just so many things that we haven't even touched on. But honestly, I was going through that website and just one click after another saying, wow, they've been there, they've done it, they've created a system for it. It's great. And it's something that we talk about a lot here for landlords, is just creating systems to help with your own consistency and making sure you're doing things the right way.
Yeah. And I mean, if I could throw in one thing for our listeners, I would tell them, if there's a property manager that you think is good locally, get to know them. Just from having this conversation just now, Steve and I are learning things here. So if it's somebody who is dealing with those issues every single day, that they kind of have all that history and experience that stacks up really quickly compared to a smaller time landlord. So, I mean, it's a valuable resource, and I can't thank Kim and Scott enough for being on the podcast here today.
Well, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yep. All right. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
That's a wrap.
All right.
That was awesome.
Great.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, I think, like I said, it's funny. You guys are the first ones ever on the show, but I almost feel crazy now for not thinking of it ahead of time, beforehand. Because
now we've set the bar.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, yeah, you guys have, the multiplication factor of your experience versus landlords is really incredible.
Yeah,
well, if we can obviously bring that to the table, or you guys need to do a one-off thing, or that kind of thing, we're happy to do that. Again, we always say we're not attorneys, but we probably could be.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
or do I play one on TV, right?
Right.
We have a private Facebook group that we try to clients. We just kind of started it up. It's kind of cool because we see people interacting on there, kind of like Bigger Pockets, but people are always tuned into Facebook. But we have one landlord out of Ohio that whenever he offers any advice, he's like, in like capital letters, I am not an attorney. And it's just like, I don't think anyone's going to sue you because of your Facebook post opinion. So.
Whenever I teach a class or do something, I always put that up there. It's always I just did one on meth, mold, and marijuana recently.
Nice. I know.
We were just talking about meth too on the last podcast. It's crazy.
Come on down to Florida. There's plenty of it down here, I'll tell you.
Well, we have a government contract with the city of Cedar Rapids because the meth problem there in the Midwest is so bad that they actually passed a city ordinance that if you're going to rent property in the city, you are mandated to perform a background check on them to make sure that they're controlling this problem. So it's an epidemic. It really is. We're seeing it here from the background check side in criminal records and places like Cedar Rapids that have double the criminal rate as the rest of the country. So it's sad and shocking all in the same time.
Wow. That's sad to hear.
Yeah, but I want to throw an offer out to you guys if you're interested in joining our Facebook group. I don't know how much business you might get out of there. I got to imagine We probably have some people in Florida, but if you guys are interested, I think you can definitely bring a lot to the table as far as your experience managing and stuff. It's it's sort of like Bigger Pockets. The biggest difference is we don't talk about the investment side purposely. We want to only talk about the day-to-day management side of real estate, which Bigger Pockets does touch on, but their focus is really the investing side and how to find properties and
the house hacking and my ROI and all those fun things.
Yeah. I told Eric, if I see one more podcast of some 25-year-old kid that's already a millionaire, I'm just sick of it. I don't want to know. I just don't care. I just don't care how he made his $1 million when he's 22 years old or whatever it is.
I think they've got to try to, I don't know, even it out a little bit on there. It's like some of them I go, but everybody's different on there. Yeah. But still, I just think there's probably too much of that. But they have their own thing.
Yeah, they
can we post this podcast? Can we share it off of yours?
Yeah. Okay. Eric, you should be able to give them a link to it and everything, right?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, get the link to it. We'll get it to our social media folks, and they'll share it out through through all our channels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and they'll get that up there and share that out through all our channels too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your Facebook thing?
It's called RentPrep for Landlords. Yeah, I can send you a link too, but yeah, you can just request to join access. And, yeah.
Great.
Yeah, it's small now, but it's growing, and it's pretty cool to see though, because you do get landlords on there that they just got a serious problem, and like within minutes, everybody's chiming in, just because everyone's so tuned into Facebook all the time. So,
sure.
Yeah.
That's what I really love about that group specifically is, like Eric said, it's only at maybe 350 members, but there's no advertisements. There's no listings. There's no gurus that are trying to sell you on whatever they're selling. It's landlords or people that manage properties genuinely helping and just sharing their experiences. So it's like crowdsourcing. So you get somebody, like one of the questions we had was somebody had a fire and said, has anyone else dealt with this before? And just the response of people and the peace of mind that gave the person to hear from other people who have said, I've been there. It's stressful, but you're going to make it. You're going to be all right. You're going to get through this.
That's so true. That is so helpful. I mean, in anything in life you're dealing with, you're like, God, they've had that too. I'm not alone. And they can share with you what they did and the insurance and blah, blah, blah. And it's great.
It's like forgetting to do your homework in school, and the first thing you do is you turn to your buddy and say, "Did you do your homework?" Because you're hoping to God that he forgot too. You don't want to be the
I'm not alone here.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but
super. Send us a link to everything, and then we can we'll share it out on our social media side.
Sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure. And we'll let you know when it goes live. I don't even know what our current podcast numbers are at, but I know we're getting some real good downloads on a daily basis. So I think,
cool.
Yeah, it'll get some good exposure for you guys, and obviously go on our website and we'll, we're going to try and promote it as much as possible too.
Yeah.
Super.
Okay,
thank you.
Well, right before we get off. Right before we get off too, I was going to ask, our blog does pretty well. We get about 120,000 visitors per month. And because of that, it does well in Google. So it ranks kind of well for stuff. So if you guys just wanted to write a blog post on property management or how to find a property manager, if you guys wanted to, and then link it back to your website.
You know how many I've written? I have a zillion of them.
Yeah, I mean, so you understand though, like if you got an authority site that can, send you another link, it can help you out. So we're more than happy to do that.
Okay, super. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you guys.
All right.
It's great meeting you guys. Yeah, thank you for your time.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
When you're in Florida, come visit.
We definitely will. We definitely will.
Tax write-off.
Exactly. Yeah, trust me. I've used it many times.
All right. Thank you.
All right, guys. Yep. Take care.